If you're serious about becoming a decamillionaire, your thoughts cannot be casual. Most people and business owners are no different. We're not limited by the opportunities around us. We're limited by the ceiling of our thoughts in our mind. Zig Ziglar used to say, stinking thinking. And friends, years ago, I learned this the hard way. I learned it the hard way. Emily and I were packing up our 5,000 square foot dream home, paid for, moving into a double wide trailer. And I was super excited, unbelievable excited. Emily was unbelievably excited. The kids, they thought it was a camping trip. You're like, dude, have you lost your mind? You moved from a dream 5,000 square foot house in the country on top of a hill, it's a beautiful estate, to a double wide trailer. Yeah, it's even better than that. The back of the trailer didn't have siding. There were holes in the floor and there were mice in the house. And we were excited. Why? Because just a few months earlier, I caught a thought that almost took root in my mind. And if it had, it would have forever changed my outcome. I actually caught myself saying, hey, Justin, you know that dream you had at 19 of becoming a decamillionaire? That's not realistic. That's not for you. That's for everybody else, not for you. Now, in that moment, that thought, I remember exactly where I was sitting. I was like, what? No, why can't I? It sounded reasonable. Here I am at 36 and I want to be a decamillionaire by the time I'm 40. How are you going to do this in 40 years? You've lost your mind, man. You're just going to sell a house and you really have no net worth whatsoever. You're going to sell it and you're going to now become a decamillionaire in 4 years. That sounds reasonable. You'll never achieve that. And even kind of feels like you're kind of humbling. Like, okay, that's for other people. I'm going to humble myself. But friends, it was a stinking lie from the pits of hell, man. If I didn't confront it, my future and Emily's future would have been ever for limited by the thoughts. So today I want to deal with thoughts. And I'm dealing a lot with thoughts because whenever I hired my coach, which helped me change my life, he spent 6 months working on my noodle, working on my brain. And this is after decades of listening to Zig Ziglar and Les Brown and Og Mandino and Charlie Tremendous Jones and Tony Robbins, and you name the great influencers out there. But for some reason, I had these thoughts that were holding back. So today I want to deal with 10 thought patterns that are either going to build you or break you. If you want to become a decamillionaire, you're going to have to move upstream. You're going to have to work on thinking. So let's deal with thought number 1. Your default thoughts become your destiny. The thoughts you have by just natural happenstance, they become your destiny. Scripture says it this way: as you think in your heart, so are you. Famous Frank Outlaw made this statement. He said, what you think, you'll become. Now, back whenever Frank made that statement, and back whenever Solomon wrote the book of Proverbs and Mr. Outlaw made his statement, they had not yet seen the research done by Dr. Andrew Huberman. Dr. Andrew Huberman is known for doing the research around the reticular activating system. Perhaps you've heard people talk about the RAS before. I know one of the people I like to speak into my life today and my children's life is Ed Milet, and he talks consistently about the reticular activating system. I never really heard of this until he started mentioning it. It's some modern science and things that happen. But ultimately what the RAS does is it filters what you see based on your dominant thoughts. In other words, what you repeatedly dwell on, that becomes reinforced. You see, my hidden thoughts and your hidden thoughts are building a visible future. What we think that we don't even say is actually going to come to fruition within our visible future. What's amazing to me is business owners I have the privilege to coach, we spend so much time editing social media captions versus editing our internal narratives. See, the day I left our dream house, I was excited, not because we were moving to a double wide. That was not exciting to me, but because I had just rejected the lie that would have prevented me from becoming what I believe God has called me to be. So here's my challenge question. What thoughts have you been playing in your mind that feels logical, but are actually lethal? What thoughts? That's number 1. Second thought that will build or break your decamillionaire journey is this: there is no such thing as a neutral thought. No such thing as a neutral thought. Whenever I was learning to drive, we had a Chevy Cavalier stick shift 5-speed. And so today in my immediate family, I'm the only person in my immediate family that can drive a stick, a manual. And it's kind of fun. In fact, my sports cars are all going to have manuals. That way none of the kids can drive it. And that way Emily can just ride beside me looking beautiful and I can have fun with it. But In that manual, there's a neutral. I could put the clutch in and I can move the gear shift to neutral and the car would naturally roll. And then when I wanted to go in gear, I push the clutch in and I would feather the gas as I put it into gear. So there's no such thing as neutral in the thought pattern. In fact, in 2 Corinthians, Paul writes a statement. He says, bring into captivity every thought. Bring every thought into captivity. The famous philosopher John Milton said this. He said, the mind is its own place, and itself can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. Our brain is amazing. There is no such thing as neutral thoughts. There's this research done in 2007 around neuroplasty. And what it proves is that every thought, every single thought reshapes pathways. There is no neutral. Everything in our conscious or our subconscious mind is constantly working to shape the way we think. We're either building our brain or we're breaking our brain. So if thoughts are bricks, we're either building a future or we're walling ourselves away from it. That's the reality of our thoughts. So let me ask you this question. What thoughts have you let squat? Just getting a little bit of seed in your head this week, not even over your lifetime. We're talking about just this week that doesn't serve your vision. Maybe they're limiting thoughts. Maybe they're cloudy thoughts. Maybe you've got to purge it and get it crystal clear. So there are no neutral thoughts. Here's the third thing that will either break or build your decamillionaire journey. God provided us a sound mind. So why do we entertain lies? And Paul, when he wrote in his second book to Timothy, the young minister at that point, he made this statement in 2 Timothy 1:7. He said, for God's not given us the spirit of fear, but a power, love, and of a sound mind. That sound mind means discernment, being able to judge things, being able to think critically. Jack Canfield said it this way, everything you want is on the other side of fear. Everything we want out of our vision is on the other side of the fear, the resistance that we're facing. Whenever you deal with the research side of this is chronic fear, the anxiety that we face, the fear that we face causes us to go into a fight or flight center, and it suppresses our decision-making and our creativity. This research is done by Lee Duo back in 1996, and it's been proven. So friends, if we have a sound mind, if we're able to look through it without any emotion, we can look at where we want to be logically. If decamillionaire is what you have your crosshair set on, then we don't need to get clarity. We've already been given the same mind. We just got to get the garbage out of our head. We got to feed the things that allows our mind to actually move into that thought pattern. This is why I guard my mind so much. This is why that every time I'm in the car with me or my kids, I'm putting on positivity. I'm putting on good music. I'm putting on things that can speak. I'm putting on a good book, some motivational speakers, things that can cause us to realize that if they can do it, I can do it. If they were able to be successful, I can be successful. Is there a chance? Yes. It is possible. Yes. Then why can't I do that? So my challenge to you is identify one fear-based thought that you have right now. Whatever it is, we all deal with it. Maybe our biggest client's going to leave. Maybe it's one of our team members are going to leave. Maybe it's that we're going to go into an apocalypse. Whatever your fear is, go ahead and put it out there. Identify it, and then replace it with a point. Replace it with a point of truth. I like to use scripture. That's who I am, but you may not have the same belief system. So find a point. Maybe it's a scientific point. Maybe it's a lifestyle point. Maybe you can remember a success that you had in your past, and you speak it daily over the lie. You speak it daily over that fear. You speak it to others, and it becomes who you are, friends. At that point, that reticular activating system I spoke about earlier, that's going to start firing, man, and you're going to actually achieve the very thoughts that you have. Here's the fourth thing that will build or break your decamillionaire journey. You've got to stop negotiating with the old version of yourself. As a Christian, and that's who I am, I'm unapologetic about that. I'm not trying to proselyte. I just want to tell you my belief system. I believe that if a person is in Christ, old things are all gone and all things have become new. That's 2 Corinthians 5:17. But there's not that much difference between the world today. In fact, I love Ralph Waldo Emerson. I love his writings. And he makes this statement. He says, the only person you are destined to become is the person that you decide to be. So friends, who you were yesterday is not who you have to be tomorrow. The Clear research firm in 2018 did some research on identity-based habit change, and they proved that lasting transformation comes when we act from our future self, not our former self. So my challenge to you is to stop negotiating with the old version of you, with who you were yesterday. Start negotiating with who you are tomorrow, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now, because that's the person, friends, that you don't want to let down. That's the person that you want to have no regrets with. That's the person you want to look in your eyes and say, we did our very best with the information we had at the time. We did the very best. Was every decision perfect? No, but we did the very best. Friends, don't look back. The old you wants comfort. The new you has a calling. You've got to lean into that calling. You got to get away from the comfort. So the challenge question is, where are you still leading, pricing, or thinking like the version of you 5 years ago? Look, friends, if your entire company has not shifted, has not modified over the last 5 years, you got a lot of work to do. And that thought of negotiating with your old self will prevent you and cause you great harm to reaching your decamillionaire journey. Okay, let's go to number 5. If fear gets the first word, don't expect faith to get the last one. Okay. Oftentimes I look to my right over here and I see that's where I'm headed. For those of you looking on YouTube, I'm going this direction. I know where I'm headed. I can see it. I can taste it. We're burning the boats, man. We're running. But if I allow fear to have the very first word, the what if this doesn't work? I need to think about it. All those hesitations. If I don't move forward in faith, then faith often doesn't come. Isaiah says this way, thou will keep them in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. In other words, if I place my eyes on the destination I have in front of me, not even this life, but where I'm ultimately going to end up, my life after this, when I see Jesus, if I keep my eyes on that, then I'm going to be in perfect peace. Martin Luther King, Martin Luther King Jr. is my hero. If I could meet anybody in all of history as this man, I would love to have met this man. He made this powerful statement. He said, faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. In the woods at night, whenever I'm taking my boys out now hunting, it can be pitch black dark. And we don't have to have a big light, just a little bit of light to just see the next step in front of us. It's amazing that in the early days, they used to be so scared with all the boogeyman, everything else in the woods, and all the sticks that crack and things that just happen in the woods, and you're not able to see. But now just a little bit of candle brings some comfort. Friends, that's faith. Take that next step. Take the next step. You know, fear dresses itself up as wisdom, and it dresses itself like wisdom now. I'll be realistic. Now's not your time, but that's not faith. Faith is constantly leaning into the future saying, I'm going to charge hell with a water pistol. I'm going to reach that destination. And if I fall forward, I'm going to keep falling forward. And every time I fall, I'm going to get up and I'm going to keep going. One of our clients that we're coaching has been delaying hiring a second in command for his company for now 18 months, not because of money, but because his fear told him that he couldn't be followed. After a lot of programming, a lot of trying to convincing and just saying, dude, you got to trust me. He finally moved, took the step. The person he hired was very well qualified, actually folded underneath him. And now the company is rapidly accelerating because fear held him back and faith moved him forward. So let me ask you this question. Where has fear disguised itself as caution in your current leadership, in your current business? Number 6 thought is this. You're not trapped. You're just committed to the wrong thought pattern. You're committed to the wrong thought pattern. Marcus Aurelius, I love his book Meditations. I like to read it in conjunction with Solomon's book of Proverbs. Marcus Aurelius made this statement. He said, a man's life is what his thoughts make of it. Think about that. Scripture says this way, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. In other words, our mind can be molded. Our mind can be adopted. Our mind can be changed. There's this concept called neural reprogramming, and you see it often talks about CBT plus neuroplasty, and it basically confirms that repetitive thoughts shape emotional reality and identity over time. This is why every year I commit to a mantra. A mantra is not some type of chant, so to speak, as so many people say it. For me, a mantra is, what is it that I need to change in my life this year that will move me forward? And often I've shared my mantra. I shared it back at the beginning of this particular year, a mantra that I have for this year that I read and say to myself on a consistent basis. Tony Robbins talks about when his life changed whenever he's running home because he didn't realize the bus was missing, and he took the same sentence and he said it over and over and over and over again. It changed his life. What was he doing? He was reprogramming his mind. Friends, oftentimes we're not stuck in business, we're trained, and we're getting the very results we're trained to get. And so if you want to be a decamillionaire, you're going to have to remove your mind limitations. You're going to have to rehearse with the logic of somebody who's already achieved it. You got to be able to find it. Who is that person who's achieved what you want to achieve, and what is their thought patterns, and how do you incorporate that into your life? So here's a challenge for you. I want you to finish this sentence. I'll never be able to do blank. Maybe you've said that. Like I said that day whenever I was caught myself, I'll never be able to be a decamillionaire by the age of 40. That was a lie. Maybe you say it this way. I'll never be able to squat 500 pounds. I have an artificial knee. Maybe I'll never be able to, what is the sentence? And then once you fill in that blank, here's a simple question. Who told you that? Who told you you'd never be able to do it? Because more than likely, in your infancy of your life, there were things that you were doing that you've never done before. I imagine that learning to walk was pretty hard when you first started walking, but now you can walk. I imagine driving a car. I imagine that first date. I imagine the first kiss. I imagine all the things that you did first time were difficult. But who has told you that you'll never be able to accomplish a decamillionaire status? Who's told you can never scale your company and double it in 3 to 5 years? Who's told you that? Is it you? Friends, retrain your thoughts. All right, number 7. This thought will prevent you from becoming a decamillionaire, and that is this. Your business will never outgrow your mental ceiling. That's the thought I want you to know. Your business can never outgrow your mental ceiling as the owner or as the leader. Scripture says, as you think, so you are. Joyce Brothers says it this way, if you want success, start thinking yourself as successful. There's some self-assessment theories and some self-efficacy theories out there that shows that your belief in your capabilities drives your actions. A lot of research around this. I go back to Ed Mylett. I know I mentioned him earlier in the show, but he has this principle that I actually applied and I'm teaching our clients because I think it's a brilliant principle. Touch your dreams. I never heard that. He's the first person I ever heard say that in all the motivational people out there. Touch your dreams, because once you touch it, you realize that you can do this. He shares the very fact he wanted to go stay at the Ritz-Carlton. Touch your dream. I shared the fact that I wanted a very, very nice luxury sports car. Touch the dream. I've driven the car. I know I can achieve it. This is a dream. I wanted a house on a few hundred acres in the woods. Touch my dream. So you got to touch your dreams, okay? Because your business is never going to outgrow your mental ceiling. If you think that you're going to be stuck at $1 million in revenue forever, you're going to be stuck at $1 million in revenue. Why can't you build a $25 million business? Why can't you take off 180 days a year? Why can't you be at all your kids' events whenever they need you to be there while at the same time having a business that grows without you? Why can't you do this? You can. So here's my challenge question for you. What is the highest level of wealth you've allowed yourself to believe is possible? Now, I wrote that question for myself. To me, reaching a decamillionaire status was like the pinnacle for me at age 40. But now my brain has stretched. It's like, well, if I was able to achieve this, with God's help and he allowed me to do this, then why can't I achieve this? And why can't we give away, instead of giving away 6 figures to charity a year, why can't I give away 8 figures to charity every year? Why can't we do it? See, that's the why. Have you thought of yourself this way? There's another thought that will build or break your decamillionaire journey, and that is this. Your personal results, your business results, will never rise above your reasoning. Just won't do it. Solomon writes this thing in Proverbs. He says, wisdom is the principal thing. Gain wisdom and get understanding. Wisdom. That was his thing. And he talks about wisdom. And the scripture says he was the wisest man ever. Albert Einstein said it this way. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we use to create them. But how many of us do this? I cannot tell you, one of the funniest things to me is whenever somebody comes on a free strategy call, we talk about where they're at, we talk about what led them to where at, where their problems are and how they don't know how to solve it, where they want to be, and we get crystal clear on what they want to be, and we say, okay, how are you going to achieve that? I don't know. Well, why don't you follow this framework? Yes, it works. Okay, well, and we talk about coaching, we talk about the price points, well, the price doesn't really affect me here, and then they make this amazing statement. Well, let me think about it. Or I try to beat them to it. Let me think about it. And I literally kind of chuckle. And I've actually now gotten bold enough to say, you realize Albert Einstein in his wisdom made this statement. He said, you cannot solve your problems using the same thought patterns that put you in the problem. So you're going to think about it with the same syntax that actually led you to this problem. You don't know the solution, and you know I do, or somebody else does, but you're going to think about whether or not you want to use the solution. You're going to get the same result you've been getting. And once somebody says, let me think about it, by the way, statistically, you only have about a 5% chance of actually gaining that business or that they will actually even move forward. So friends, I thought this was interesting. Way back in 1962, Ellis did some research that really hasn't been changed much since over 50 years ago. And what they discovered was this: our faulty reasoning patterns. Today we would call it a cognitive distortions. Okay. Our faulty reasoning patterns produce repeatable failures. The only way we can get out of repeatable failures is to gain clarity. And then when we gain clarity, it begins to clean up our logic. So most of us are trying to build a business that's going to give us freedom. But our results that we're trying to achieve are never going to rise above our reasoning. So we have to change our input. This is why I firmly believe in coaching. This is why this year I've spent $180,000 on coaching myself. And it's what has led me to start another business from 0 to a 7-figure run rate in less than 9 months. Because I want my thoughts to be constantly improved and step upwards. So to me, I don't have a task problem. Oftentimes I have a logic problem, a thought logic problem. So let me ask you a challenge question. Pick one area of your business that's underperforming. What internal explanation do you have that keeps that part of your business staying small or being stuck or underperforming? Think about it. All right, number 9. What you tolerate in your thinking, you teach your team to repeat. In our house, we have this verse. It says, keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it is the issues of life. And I've talked about this verse before on the podcast, and it's Solomon who wrote that, and keep is a shepherd's term, and Solomon was not a shepherd. His dad was. Keep thy heart with all diligence. Diligence, keep is a shepherd's term. It's like building a corral for your sheep. And diligence is a warrior's term. Solomon wasn't a warrior. His dad was. David was a warrior. But diligence is like building a high tower. So keep your heart, keep your mind with all diligence. Build protection around it and stand guard over the top of it. For out of your mind are the issues of life. Peter Drucker took that same principle and he made this statement. He said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Where am I getting with this? Is that oftentimes our teams see our mindset before they ever hear what comes out of our mouth. They see the way we're processing before we actually tell them what we're trying to do. And if we tolerate scarcity or chaos or clutter or lack of clarity or little thinking or complaining or whatever we tolerate in our brain, we may not actually say it out loud. Our team sees it. And whatever we tolerate, they're going to repeat. I'm currently coaching dozens of business owners, and we're rapidly scaling their company. We're having a blast with this. So much fun to pour into the lives of business owners who really genuinely want to scale. And one of our owners we're coaching, he avoided a very bold decision, and he over-explained his failure. I just sat back and listened. And I said, let me ask you a question. How's your team responded as you've been processing this? He said, well, they're a little nervous. I said, have you said anything to them? Nope. I said, let me teach you a principle. Your team's culture is going to mirror your thoughts, not your words. And he sat back in his chair and he goes, I've never thought about that, Justin. So let me ask you a very pointed question. What is your mindset teaching your team right now to accept as normal? What is your mindset? Have you poured into your mind? All right, we're down to the 10th thought. This thought, friends, if you don't gather this, you will miss your journey to Decamillionaire. And that is this: clarity doesn't come from waiting. Clarity comes from deciding. Deciding. Now, whenever I use that word decision, I talk about it often. Deciding means to cut away other options. It's not a choice. It doesn't come from choosing one or the other. It's deciding, no, I'm going to take this particular path and we're going to go and we're going to make it work. That's a decision. James, the half-brother of Jesus, wrote this in James 1:5. He said, if any of you lack wisdom, which all of us do, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, and it shall be given him liberally, like more than you can handle. One of the things I've been teaching my team is that if we don't know what to do, take a step. And when you take a step, to make a decision, take a step, even though you don't know what's going to happen, you're going to gain clarity. I love Theodore Roosevelt's quote around this particular thought. He said this: in any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. Well, that seems obvious. If you go on to read the rest of his explanation, take the step. Take the step. There was some research done back in 2009 by a Japanese firm, and it says decision science shows clarity increases after commitment, not before. This is why, friends, I love a free strategy call, because as you're talking to that strategy call, you're getting clarity, but then it forces you to a commitment, not to hire somebody, but it forces you to a commitment that either I'm going to take action or I'm not. And science shows that whenever you take action, clarity comes, not before then. It's crazy. This is one thing I've noticed consistently after talking with now almost 100 decamillionaires and even a few billionaires at this point. When I talk to these individuals, I am not here to make decisions, try to figure out all the what ifs. If this sounds like it can help me, go. We'll figure out how to pay for it. We'll figure out how to make it right. We're going to move in this direction decisively now. That is a major difference between the vast majority of broke folk out there and the vast majority of business owners who luckily to get $1 million valuation versus somebody who's saying, I'm going to reach $10 million in value. They make a decision and then clarity follows. You see, clarity doesn't come when you're thinking about it. It doesn't come when you're pacing the floor. It comes only after the first step. My dad used to make the statement. He says, son, God directs steps, not parked cars. He wants you to take a step. He'll direct it. He's going to direct your feet. He's going to direct your path. But he ain't going to do it if you're stuck. He ain't going to move. You got to start moving, man. Whenever we first launched the Relentless Value Coaching, September of last year, we had a client come in, and now we went from one to dozens, went from no income to it'd be 7 figures within a year. It's pretty crazy to see what happens just following the framework that we teach. In fact, my brain's sitting on saying, how long is it going to take us to get to 8 figures? How can we impact 1,000 business owners to help them radically scale their companies? Whenever I first started the core offer, $1,500 a month for our flagship offer, I had this moment where I was like, would I pay $1,500 a month for this offer? With what we're teaching, would I pay for it? Well, the answer was yes, I had, and I'd pay a lot more than that. But I questioned. But in order for me to come to resilience on that $1,500 a month or the $3,000 a month or the $250,000 offer, the $100,000 offer, whatever our offers are at this present point, whenever I had to come to clarity, I had to first make the offer and talk about it. You know what happened? People bought the $1,500 a month, the $3,000 a month. They're radically changing their lives. We have clients who are engaged us at 6 figures a year. We have clients now that are in mid 6 figures a year. It's pretty crazy to see what's happening because I had to make a step. Yes, I see this. I don't know if it'll sell, man, but I'm gonna put it out there and people want it. They want transformation. Let me ask you a simple, challenging question. Where are you waiting right now in your life for God to confirm what he's already told you to do? Think about that, friends. You already have your vision. You already have your calling. You know who you're equipped to serve. You have a business. What are you waiting on to God to confirm? He's already told you to do, man. Whenever I think about these 10 points, here's what I think of. Before I look at another funnel or hire an expert, I have to just ask myself these questions. And these are the questions that I ask myself before I make any major move. What belief is quietly capping my leadership? What belief is quietly preventing my vision from coming true? What lie have I told to myself along this position that sounds like wisdom? What new thought patterns do I need to have in my head that moves my ceiling upwards, that changes my thought pattern, that gives me bigger vision, bigger goals? You see, friends, your results are trailing your reasoning. Change the thoughts, change the outcome. Friends, I hope this helps you. I hope it helps you. Look, if it hits home in the right time, I would love to have the opportunity to talk with you. I know our strategists would love to have the opportunity to talk with you. We are coaching business owners and they are rapidly scaling their companies. The question is never the price. The question is how bad do you want that vision that you painted for yourself? Because if you want it, friends, you'll do whatever it takes to achieve that. Till next time, I'll make it a great day. Talk to you soon.